medieval combat, early Renaissance combat, specifically swordsmanship. Now, the Master of Fjord, 1409, 1410, calls the thrust a deadly snake, a deadly serpent, responsible for more deaths and wounds than any other technique. And the Master of Vadi in 1482 says something very similar. The ancient Romans knew how dangerous a thrust was, but they cut and thrust, and so did medieval knights and men-at-arms. And there are swords that are specifically designed more for thrusting than for cutting. For example, this one is spadone or spadone. It's tapered, it's rigid, and because it's tapered and rigid, it's more dangerous on thrusting, it's more accurate, it's more agile on the thrusting and on warding off or breaking of thrust, counter-thrusting. Plus, and because of that, the trade-off is you have less mass here, less width, less of an edge bevel to give powerful cuts with this portion of the blade. But another advantage is that it actually can be quite agile and adroit in how it can deliver cuts because it doesn't have its mass here. But it still doesn't cut as well. Now, against armor, thrusting is the primary attack. Against someone in a suit of armor, in a harness of fighting, the primary places you're going to attack with a sword is going to be the throat, under the helm if you can, eye sockets, under the arm, under the folds and the male skirt, here, behind the knee, inner elbow, hand even. And if they don't have mail here, they're quite vulnerable. Now keep in mind, they're vulnerable to these thrusts because they're almost invulnerable to cutting blows, and they certainly are entirely invulnerable to slicing. But if you are unarmored, you have those very same vulnerabilities to thrust, and another 90. Plus the vulnerabilities to cuts and thrusts and other blows. So, don't think of this as being a flaw, but let's play with some of the thrusts and why they're so dangerous, and keep in mind why medieval knights and tournaments and non-lethal practicing, and even into the Renaissance and the schools of defense, they had rules against thrusting. The scholar's privilege. It's because of how dangerous the thrust can be. Let's see what we can do here against this old Bob here, who has had plenty of thrusts over his day. Okay, but he's okay with it. Now, Bob's not even moving. Bob's not even moving. And it's possible that a lot of times you go to do the thrust and it's like, oh crap, I missed. Happens all the time. That's why you practice thrusting with different blades and different effects. But the ability to stab right in there against someone who has a helmet on, wow! Oh my gosh! Or the ability to be here and to look like you're going to throw a cutting blow and then suddenly turn it into not a cutting blow like that, but a thrust that missed, or a thrust that missed again, or a thrust that missed again, or another one that missed, or right there into the throat. Wow! So you go from what appears to be a cut to a thrust. Can you get through the plate armor? Yes and no. There are images showing it. There have been modern experiments on softer metals that have done it. There's been modern experiments, I've done some myself, that can't get through and damage the swords. And this point is not a sharp point. So this is an extremely light, but very rigid blade. Very rigid blade. So that the things I can do with it, oh, wow! Or the things that I might do with it, bam, bam, oh, vicious techniques. And this is a sharp blade with a very, very acute and reinforced point. It literally becomes wider and thicker in the last few inches. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful weapon. Well, I've got a sword designed for thrusting into armor. And this visor, it's even hard to see here, is designed to prevent the thrust and yet still give good visibility. So let's see what happens. How many tries will it take for me to get into there? Or can I even do it? Yeah, I can. Okay, but that's because I'm trained how to use this kind of weapon against that kind of helmet. So that if I'm in the middle of battle going, yeah, 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 that's the usual outcome. That's why they wore these beautiful helmets. Whew. And look at the dents I put on him. Why? Because this is a softer modern steel, and this is a softer modern steel. And I have never gotten to use an authentic historical specimen on a historical specimen to say whether or not that would have been the same, similar, less, or more of an outcome. So keep this in mind. Thrusting in combat is not the same as thrusting against a stationary target that's not trying to stab me back. There's about 5 different ways you can turn that weapon to thrust. And you see the reach, how the reach changes. The reach changes with the biomechanics of the shoulder and how the body can then lean and turn. And this is why we see the stances that we see with the thrust. So that a blade like this, which is flatter and has still potential to cut, one edge or the other edge, and then suddenly into a thrust. One edge or the other edge, and suddenly into a thrust. Oh, that is what makes the medieval sword, the medieval long sword, the double-edged sword, so beautiful, so effective, so dangerous with thrusting. And that's why they don't do it in practice, fighting, practice bouts, playing of any Fechschulen exhibitions, contests, tournaments. It kills, it's dangerous. It goes through faces and eyes and throats and groins and bladders and under the arm. Yeah, very important. We have to train in thrust, we have to practice thrust, we have to appreciate and know thrust. But it is a cut and thrust and a thrust and cut weapon. Keep that in mind. Thanks for watching.